And showtime. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup. Look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel in 5 minutes or thereabouts. My name is Rich Freeman. I am executive editor of the ChannelPro Network, also a co-host of this program. I am joined this week, as I am every week, by your other co-host, Eric Simpson, a business transformation and improvement advisor to MSPs and other IT providers. Eric, how goes it?
It goes well, Rich. Here in California, it feels like summer because this week has been the hottest, I think, on record. Town next door to us a couple of days ago, Anaheim, California, set the record for the hottest place in the U.S. Believe it or not. Yesterday, I think, was 87. Today, it's going to be similar to that. So, winter, not here in SoCal.
I had heard some of this actually because we're recording this a few days before the Super Bowl, which is going to get played out in your backyard there, and they're expecting very high temperatures for that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And SoFi Stadium, it's a fantastic stadium. There's lots of, the way they built it, air in from the ocean and all that keeps it nice and cool. But yeah, it's gonna be a scorcher, I think, on Super Bowl Sunday. So I'm excited for that matchup. My Rams, we'll see if they can pull it off this time.
Okay. Well, we'll know by our next episode. For now, let's dive into this week's top story here. And it's not actually a story that broke in the news this week. So first of all, I'll put a plug in for something we published on channelpronetwork.com this week. I did a webinar earlier this week with an MSP in Texas named Nancy Sabino, who sold her business to a larger MSP last September. And she was kind enough to make some time and talk me through that entire process from, the thinking that went into putting her business on the market and evaluating offers, putting together a negotiating team. If you are thinking at all about this process right now, I really, recommend that you check this webinar out and just kind of listen to her experience, because there's a lot of wisdom and advice and experience there that will maybe save you some mistakes down the road. Not that she made any, but she certainly learned some things along the way that I think people can put to work. So the webinar is called M&A Today, a first-person look at selling your business. And in preparing for that, Eric, I came across some statistics I hadn't actually seen before that are still relatively new. So one of them came from an organization called Deal Logic, which is sort of an analyst firm. They track the M&A market. And mid-December last year, so not totally at the end of the year, but almost at the end of the year, they published a figure in which they said that the total worldwide volume of merger and acquisition activity in 2021 was up 63% last year to $5.63 trillion with a T. Now that's all M&A activity worldwide, so all sectors of the economy, not just IT. But 5.63 trillion, up 63%. Here in the US, 2.61 trillion last year, and that's up almost 100%. And then I came across some statistics from PwC they may be measuring things a little bit differently, but they did look specifically at the technology sector, and they said in 2021, deal value was $293.2 billion. And I forget the percentage rate at which it went up, but a lot would be a pretty safe guess. This is consistent with what I've been hearing when I talk to M&A advisors, when I talk to MSPs. There is a ton of money in the market right now. Private equity funds looking for MSPs to buy. If anything, what I keep hearing is that the biggest problem that the PE firms have right now is finding high quality MSPs willing to sell. They've got money they want to put to work. They can't find anything worth buying with it. And there are MSPs buying other MSPs as well. And of course, what this means for folks in our audience here is that it's going to be a seller's market probably in 2022 and perhaps beyond that, which raises the question then, should you be selling now? Even if you weren't necessarily planning on an exit at this point, should you sell now? And you know what, Eric, I'll say right out front, I don't have an answer to that question. But I do think these numbers and what I'm hearing from people who work in that mergers and acquisition space really call attention to the fact that there is a particular kind of window open right now that presents opportunities for folks in our audience here. And I mean, this is really a time when you kind of have to make some decisions about what you want to do, how long you want to be doing it, and what that means for potentially making a deal, and also what it means. Because keep in mind, Eric, on the far side of this, after all this activity is done, there are going to be some pretty giant MSPs out there that you're going to be competing with if you're a smaller firm. What does that mean for you? So I'm asking more questions than I'm answering, Eric, but this has been on my mind this week.
And I think it's been on the mind of a lot of folks in our industry, Rich. I've been involved with probably 3 dozen M&A engagements with partners, with PE firms, with other MSPs that are doing roll-ups and things like that. And I've got to say, the last 2 years have been very, very active, even from folks just, pinging me for advice, to just pick my brain because they're looking at this opportunity in a way that has not been looked at in our industry historically for these MSPs. And I'll say that, to try to answer your question, should you sell? Well, it's situational for every MSP. What I will say, from direct experience and statistics, the valuations for these MSPs is unheard of at this point. It goes beyond financial valuation. And it is something that, I, from doing this for so long, am looking at these valuations of MSPs that are being acquired, and I'm like scratching my head going, holy cow, they're getting paid a premium because they are MSPs. And it is interesting how this is all happening. The takeaway here is there are some best practices that every MSP needs to adhere to in general to maximize profitability, sustainability, capacity planning, the ability to grow. And it's been more challenging the last couple of years, especially right now, Rich. We've talked about this before, hiring good talent and being able to replace yourself at a leadership position in order for someone that wants to acquire you to check that box that says, hey, by the time that seller decides they want to go, off into the wild blue yonder, I need to make sure that that organization is going to continue to grow and prosper. So there are several, checklist items that we need to check off. More than 50% MRR is going to increase valuation. The higher you EBITDA for the last 3 years, we're seeing a growth in EBITDA. The higher it is, the better the valuation. Good staff, good leadership, the ability for the organization, again, to operate without the existing owner. Now, some folks don't want to exit the owner. Some folks that are making these acquisitions want to keep the owner in place to say, look, we want you to continue to grow that. And these owners are looking at this opportunity by saying, oh my goodness, I'll take a big check right now with an earn out over time. I just want to be able to take vacations and time off, right? And I want to have a role that I enjoy instead of being, the operations and finance and everything and HR leader. I just want to go do engineering, or I just want to do sales. And so it makes it very attractive in that perspective as well. It is a unique trend that we're seeing. And again, like you mentioned, Rich, it's not just impacting our industry, but all industries. But specifically for our industry, we've not seen this type of momentum before.
And I'll just toss this one item out there before we move on, which is one of the many smart things Nancy Sabino in that webinar did early on when she started thinking about selling her business, was hire somebody in the industry to come in and create a fair valuation for the business. Because I think a big problem that a lot of MSPs run into is they don't really know what their practice is worth right now. There are a lot of misconceptions about what buyers are looking for. And as you said, I mean, the buying conditions right now are unusual to begin with. So you really do need to go into that process with a good, solid, fair, experienced third-party perspective on what the company is worth, and that's going to help you get a real sense for what you can get out there. And then you got to figure out whether or not you're willing to take that money and deal with the consequences of what it means afterwards. And so I will just wish everybody watching or listening to this right now good luck. It is an interesting decision process to work your way through. And I will also include a link to that webinar in the show notes for this episode in case you want to go check it out that way, but you can get it on channelpronetwork.com too. So Eric, one of the key things in terms of the value of your business to a potential buyer, you said, is staff, and that has a connection to your tip of the week.
Absolutely, Rich. And the tip of the week is simply to review and evaluate your understanding and your staff's understanding of each of their roles and responsibilities in the organization. I was on a call with a client just the other day and expressed the desire to speak to some of their new sales hires on separate calls. And when I started having these calls, I began to appreciate how differently they perceive their role today after being on the ground maybe 6 or 9 months than what their understanding of their role was the day they were hired. And that was based upon them getting drug into situations, being asked to help out with customer service issues, with other things that were not directly, maybe indirectly, but not specifically directly related or connected to their specific job role. And so here's what happens, Rich. In the absence of process or accountability, people tend to do what they think is best. And sometimes what they think is best flies in the face of what someone else who may be managing them or has an expectation uh, uh, is. And so what my advice is to make sure, and especially during these last couple of years with the pandemic and everybody just pitching in and and rowing, trying to row in a direction that's taken us maybe outside of what our core role and responsibility is. So the staff need to understand what your expectation is of their role and responsibility. It has to be documented and they have to agree to it. And then if they decide to pitch in or you're asking them to pitch in, there has to be an understanding that that is above and beyond what they're expected to do. Their primary role and priority is to deliver on their job role. And that is what they are measured on. Remember, you're expecting them to produce, whether that's technical service outcomes or sales, revenue growth, and things like that. That's what their review is based on. How did they perform based on that role? And what you don't ever want to encounter is a situation where there is a performance review and the staff member says something to you like, well, the reason I didn't hit my numbers or didn't achieve these outcomes or these objectives is because I got caught up in all this other stuff, right? So we've got to be very, very clear with our team. And now, it's time to really review what everyone is doing. And if adjustments need to be made, we need to do those now and make sure that we're setting our staff off on the right foot to give them the opportunity to succeed and a potential to earn all the bonuses and commissions and perks that they can by meeting and exceeding your performance objectives for them.
And I think the key words in there, as you said, it has to be documented, and I think that's really critical if you want to avoid or at least minimize the odds of this kind of confusion. You got to get it in writing so that the person you're managing can actually check and see. Here's what we agreed to at the beginning of the year. These are my responsibilities. This is how I'm going to get measured, how my performance is going to get measured, because it gets a lot easier for the manager and the employee to sort of drift into different directions if that's not spelled out in writing and, as you said, agreed to by both parties.
Yeah, that is so key, Rich, and it transcends the documentation of it. Has to be very, very specific. It has to be measurable. Like, for instance, one of the sales team I was speaking with shared with me that their objective when they were hired was to grow revenue. And I said, what does that mean? Grow revenue. They said, well, I do have some, let me find it. Let me pull it up. So they weren't even tracking what their quotas were supposed to be. And so I said, okay, so the quota is this much MRR this year and this much GP. Okay, so what is your plan to go get that, right? So don't be ambiguous. It's not increase, service delivery efficiency. It's increase service delivery efficiency by 10%, by 15%. Grow recurring revenue to this point, right? It has to be very specific so that there is no ambiguity and no opportunity for a misunderstanding.
Okay, very important advice. Leaves us with time for just one more story. And Eric, our good friend Florida Man, is back. Now, I will say this, going right into this, nobody gets hurt, thankfully, in this story. And the reason somebody could have gotten hurt is because this story involves a guy who jumped out of a car seconds before it got hit by a train and flung through the air into the side of a house nearby. Nobody in the car hurt, nobody in the train, nobody in the house. Here's the Florida Man angle on this. That was not the driver's car. The driver had been out drinking, we believe. He was at a bar into the wee hours of Saturday morning. He, in his own words, commandeered a car, stole a car in a quote unquote good faith effort to find his car. He couldn't remember where he parked it, stole somebody else's car to go find where he parked his car, put that car somehow or another in front of a train. When the police showed up, he had just recently stolen a forklift and was back on the prowl for his car. So a lot of poor decisions, I would say there, Eric. But gosh, Florida Man, you sure are entertaining.
Yeah, lock up your vehicles, folks. Lock them up tight. Who knows, who might come looking. I mean, if he hadn't have found the forklift, who knows what he might be driving, trying to find his car. Good humor story segment for today's discussion, Rich.
And most of all, because everyone comes out of it safe and it's just a wrecked car. Well, folks, that is all the time we have this week. Thank you so much for joining us. You know that we are both a video and a podcast. If you're watching the video now, but you like podcasts, go into your podcast provider of choice, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it, you'll find us there. Please subscribe, please rate and review. It'll enable other folks to find this program a little bit more easily. If you are actually listening to the podcast, you want to check us out on video, easiest way to do that is go to YouTube, look for the ChannelPro Network channel there, become a subscriber. If you click that little bell icon over there, you'll even get notified when the new episodes go up. You can find the webinar with Nancy Sabino that I was talking about before, plus all sorts of other great business growth advice for your company, news coverage, you name it, at channelpronetwork.com. We've got awesome new coverage and content going up there for you every single day. To learn more about Eric and the work he does with his clients, you should visit ericksimpson.com. That is ERICK Simpson.com. So once again, folks, we thank you for joining us. We're going to see you again next week with another episode. Until then, please enjoy the rest of your week. Eric and I are enjoying the rest of your week already.